Order. I'd like to call the meeting to order for February 11th, 2022, the meeting of the Board of Regents. Roll call, please.
Regent Hemmer. Regent Ibrahim. Regent Cradaville.
Here.
Regent Limbach. Here. Regent Clare. Here. Regent Kenny.
Here.
Regent O'Connor. Regent Ferris.
Here.
Regent Pillen.
Here.
Regent Schaefer.
Here.
Regent Stark.
Here.
Regent Whites. Quorum is present.
In your materials, you have a copy of the minutes from our meeting from December 3rd, 2021. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Regent Cradaville.
Yes.
Regent Limbach.
Yes.
Regent Hemmer.
Yes.
Regent Kenny.
Here.
Regent Ferris.
Yes.
Regent Pillen.
Yes.
Regent Schaefer.
Yes.
Regent Stark.
Yes.
Regent Whites. Regent Clare.
Yes.
Minutes are adopted.
Thank you. It is my honor to introduce Senator Mike Hilgers, Speaker of the Legislature. He was elected to the Nebraska Legislature in 2016 and re-elected in 2020. Senator Hilgers represents District 21, which covers Northwest, Lincoln, and Lancaster County. In January 2021, Senator was elected unanimously Speaker to the Legislature. He is the third lawmaker from Lincoln to be selected as Speaker since the state adopted the unicameral system of governments in 1937. Senator Hilgers was an entrepreneur, small business owner who has built one of the fastest growing law firms in the country. As a founding partner, Hilgers has consistently named the Great Plains Super Lawyer List. A native Nebraskan, Mike and his, excuse me. Excuse me, Mike. A native Nebraskan, Mike and his wife. Yeah, that's me. Mike and his wife, Heather, live in Northwest Lincoln and have 4 children. Mr. Speaker, thank you for joining us today.
Can you hear me? All right, there we go. The mic's working. President Carter, good morning. Chairman Kinney, members of the Nebraska Board of Regents, University of Nebraska Board of Regents, thank you for having me here this morning. It is a great honor to see you again. I appreciate you adjusting for my schedule this morning. I don't have a lot of time this morning, and the truth is we don't have a lot of time in this legislative session, and in some ways the state doesn't have a lot of time to meet the competitive challenges that we have before us. What I thought I would do is give you a little bit of an update on where we are from the last time we met last year and what I see coming the rest of the session, because I really do think this session presents transformative opportunities for the state of Nebraska. When we were together last, I talked a little bit about what I thought were some of the competitive threats and the urgency that the state faces as we look to states competing around us in an environment in which people are now moving in ways that they haven't over the last 20 or 30 years, or at least in modern lifetime. At the same time, I thought that I looked towards the session with great optimism and hope, because I thought we had the opportunity as Nebraskans with what I think is the best workforce and people in the entire country to meet those challenges and actually seize new opportunities. And I thought that as the 107th legislature began, that we have the right ingredients to have success in that endeavor. And the reason I thought that is because we had the right people in place and the right opportunities in front of us to be able to be successful. We have leaders who have done big things. We have leaders who have strong vision. We have leaders who want to be successful, who think of their public service with the people in mind first. And we had a very successful first session. And as I look towards the second session of the legislature, I wasn't exactly sure how those opportunities might materialize, but as we sit here today on day 24 of the 60-day short session, it's becoming very clear what those opportunities might be. And the biggest thing with I don't know, that was very dramatic. I don't have anything coming on. The biggest item on our agenda is how do we wisely spend the resources that have been given to us in some cases and also earned in others. And specifically what I mean is the over $1 billion given to the state of Nebraska through the federal Arpa Act. And in addition to that, we have also, through our own good stewardship, working with our partners, such as the University of Nebraska, and being financially disciplined, we have well over $1 billion, about $1.5 billion in our cash reserve, plus hundreds of millions of dollars in general fund resources. And the challenge before us, a challenge that I think will come probably in mid-March, is how do we spend those dollars in a way that is most transformative for the state of Nebraska. And I think my colleagues would agree with me when I say that our standard is at a high level this. We're looking for projects that are transformative, first and foremost, things that will really change the trajectory of the state of Nebraska. We're looking for things that are one-off, not recurring, and we're looking for things that will be balanced across the entire state. So not just North Omaha and Omaha, but also our friends out west in North Platte and the Panhandle. And I think we have, for that $1 billion, we have, I think, $4 billion of requests so far. And so I feel very confident in our ability to do all of those things. What would those things include? Well, the governor has included a number of proposals, and the Appropriations Committee is working through those proposals right now. I'll just give you a flavor of some of the things that I think are very exciting. One is work around workforce development. There have been proposals to beef up our internship game. There are proposals to help with workforce development. There are proposals to work with housing, both in our urban and rural areas. There are also very exciting proposals from the university. Yesterday, I understand President Carter paid us a visit to the Capitol to talk about what I think could be an incredibly transformative opportunity with the NC3 project. There are also proposals that revolve around water rights and our water resources. I think the governor is right when he says that our second most important resource behind people is our water resources. And that's undoubtedly true that we've been very blessed with great water resources here in Nebraska. And our challenge is how do we preserve those water resources, but also build off those water assets. And if you look around the state, from Lake McConaughey, Lewis and Clark Lake to the Lower Platte region, are there opportunities for us to be able to enhance the ability of Nebraskans to enjoy water resources, develop economic opportunities in tourism, as well as maybe create new ones, such as potential lakes between Lincoln and Omaha? And we've heard a lot of support, and we've had bills in the legislature, including my bills, LB 1015 and 1023, which were heard this week, that do exactly that. Beyond that, we have a lot of additional challenges that we have to meet, including issues relating to criminal justice reform. We know the governor has asked for a budget request to replace NSP. We know at the same time that CJI, the Criminal Justice Initiative, is working through potential sentencing reform. How we deal with that, I think, is going to help determine our trajectory as a state. But big picture, beyond that major issue, the question is how much can we get done in the time remaining before us? As my colleagues look at the calendar, as you might look at the calendar, it sort of feels like the year just started. January was a short month ago, and the legislative session just started, not even 25 legislative days. But the truth is, in many ways, the session is almost over. And you can see that if you look at the calendar. In mid-March, as I mentioned, I anticipate the budget coming to the floor. It's actually not one budget, it's multiple budgets. And in fact, it might be one of the most complex budget interaction proposals that we've seen in modern times. That I anticipate will probably take 2 weeks. If you start to do the math with that right in the middle of our schedule, I have only a few short weeks between now and then, and only 2 weeks afterwards to get through almost 106 priority bills from the legislature. We've gone through about 6. So we have to be nimble, we have to be process-driven, we have to work together and collaborate, not waste time, and we have to have the big picture in mind. What those priorities are, we know of some. We know, for instance, that there are efforts, we're debating them on the floor this morning, to reform our education funding systems. We also know, which will be debated next week, that there's a strong effort to provide more income tax relief to Nebraskans. And I think there will be strong support with that given the inflationary environment that we live in. Beyond that, I'll know more in about 10 days what my colleagues decided will be their priorities. And what we will do is pick the ones that we think will have the most transformative opportunity that we have. In an era of term limits, it's very difficult to get big things done because you have talent that walks out the door every day. I'm pleased to say that we have 48 outstanding senators who work together mostly as a team and get things big accomplished. They have a history of it, they have a record of it, and I have every expectation that this year we will meet the needs of the state of Nebraska and seize those opportunities that are in front of us. I said I didn't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time. I don't want to take up any more time, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Questions?
Yeah, so Senator Hilgers, thank you for coming. Thanks for your leadership, not only this year, but in prior years as well. You've been a great ambassador for the state of Nebraska, and we appreciate that. You're right, and I don't think people understand the severity and the magnitude of the fact that this is a really critical legislative session. We've gotten those one-time ARPA monies that are critical, and if used correctly, can be a complete game changer for the state of Nebraska. How in the world are you going to prioritize bills when you're talking about the university, of course, but then you're also talking about broadband, you're talking about water rights, you're talking about things that impact the entire state?
Well, I appreciate it's great to see you, Regent Claire. Thanks for the question. And the good news is I believe in people and process first. And we've got, I think, a very good process, and we've got one of the best people. We have some of the best people working on it. In particular, I think the best appropriations chair we've had. No offense, I think Senator Mello, other than former Senator Mello is here today. Sorry, we have an I'll put it this way. We have a very, very good appropriations chair. As I mentioned, the reason why we have a lot of money right now, Regent Claire, is in part because the federal government, in response to COVID, has given us $1 billion. But the other piece is we've been very disciplined. We've had, over the last 6 years, since Chairman Stinner has been chair of the Appropriations Committee with Governor Ricketts, we've kept spending under 3%. And if you look historically at other states, that's a successful formula to having additional revenue. So we have got great leadership there. We've got a good process. As I mentioned, there's $4 billion worth of requests, and that means $3 out of $4 won't get into the final ARPA budget, at least, although there's some other resources. I feel pretty confident in my conversations with colleagues that the vast majority of what will come out of the Appropriations Committee, or the majority, or certainly a large portion, will have a lot of widespread support amongst my colleagues in the body, and I think there's a real strong path to getting a lot of widespread support as it comes out, even something close to unanimity. There's just when you've got those kind of resources, and if you've got a good collaborative process, which Senator Stinner has had, I think we'll be successful.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of our Board of Regents, our 16,000 faculty and staff, our 51,000 students, I just want to say how thankful we are that you've come to spend some time with us here this morning. As Regent Claire said, we are in very much appreciation of your leadership and your continued support for the University of Nebraska. 45 years ago, I was a plebe at the U.S. Naval Academy, and I learned that time, tide, and formation wait for no one. So yes, time is an absolute, and we recognize the challenges that you have, and we are here to help you expand that time in any way and manner, shape, and form that we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Carter. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. In compliance with Nebraska Open Meetings Act, the board has posted a copy of the act on the south wall of the boardroom behind the seating room, behind the press. Up next, Paul Umbach, founder of Trip Umbach, is here to present the university's Economic Impact Report. Through his postgraduate research at Harvard University, Paul's developed a field of economic design thinking using societal impact analysis as a planning tool to bring communities around the world. A published author and active contributor, Paul has presented at more than 100 state and national conferences on the topic of community health, healthcare reform, economic impact, and regional planning. He received the Fisher Award for Distinction from Penn State University, where he served 8 years on the Penn State's Outreach Advisory Board. Paul, we're excited to hear your findings regarding the university's economic impact.
Thank you very much, everybody, for such a warm welcome, and also for inviting me last night. I want to thank President Carter and the Regents for the opportunity to present the economic impact study. I was here 3 years ago, almost to the day. A lot has happened in 3 years. I don't think there's been 3 years in any of our lives that have been more different than the 3 we just went through. And back then, we were able to share with the Regents the economic impact report. And there's been very significant positive changes. Even during the COVID crisis, we were able to see the university as a whole grow by more than $1 billion in its economic impact to the state of Nebraska. I want to start today by just going through some slides to give you kind of an overview, so we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, I get to do that. Okay. As was said, we've had a chance to do about 500 college and university economic impact studies. It all started for me 40 years ago down the road in Seward, Nebraska, where I was in the seminary program and I was studying community ministry. And they said, you can't have community ministry as a major, you have to pick something. So I picked geography, and I met a professor who, I love geography, and he introduced me to economic geography, and that's been my passion for 40 years. But I haven't forgotten also about community health, and really the Ministry of Health. So Trip Umbach does community health and economic impact and a whole bunch of things in between. Now for the real fun, telling you about the fact that your university touches the lives of people throughout the 500-mile beautiful state of Nebraska. And one thing that's really exciting about today's presentation is that your mission really to bring prosperity and education and resources and civic engagement and research is working. And it's not just working where you have university campuses, it's really working in every region of the state and every community of the state. And that's the story I want to tell today. Your president in 2020, Ted, put together a 5-year strategy, and we're midstream in that strategy. He's midstream in his strategy. And again, that strategy is delivering results that are reflected in the 2021 Economic Impact Study. The report that I'm presenting on is now available, or will be available any minute online, and will be a report that you can download. It's an attractive, high-quality, professional-looking report with lots of pictures and numbers. But I think what you really want to understand are some of the key findings I'm going to take us through right now. Let's start with some big numbers. Your economic impact for 2021 is estimated at $5.8 billion, and that's generated directly and indirectly in the state of Nebraska. And what I always tell people is I use myself as an example. When I arrived today from Missouri yesterday, or we arrived yesterday, my colleague Julia and I, we brought fresh dollars with us from out of the state. And as a result, when we stay over and when we go out to dinner and when we drive around and spend money, that's bringing money in. So we're visitors bringing a fresh dollar in. However, when you write a check to Trip Umbach, it doesn't count in the Nebraska economy because it leaked outside to Kansas City, where we're now headquartered. And as a result of this in and out of dollar flow, you get a number that really shares, I think, very accurately what the university's net impact is to the state. Your spending that stays here and your attraction of dollars. So when you attract federal dollars and other grants and contracts from outside the state, it actually gets spent now in Nebraska, and that generates through the economy. A lot of your growth has been in your growth in research and support from outside the state. And also you do a great job, and you'll see it later in the presentation, of bringing people in to the state for conferences, meetings, athletics, and that's generated. And even in the COVID era, where there was probably less visitation in 2021, there was still incredible economic impact. And the other thing is the jobs. 47,000 jobs are created or maintained. That's like 1 out of every 28 working people in Nebraska have something to do with either directly or indirectly having their employment because of the university. And that's really an amazing number. You generate about $385 million in tax revenue for the state and local governments. And that's a big share of what you receive. You give back just directly. But then when you look at what you receive from the state, which is generous and very, very important, you also get a chance to see that for every dollar you do receive from the state of Nebraska in state support, you return about $9. And the last time we did this study, it was more $1 and $7. So there's been an additional $2 in 3 years that now goes back to our friends at the Capitol. It's a story that really is statewide. And if you look at the economic impact numbers across the state, in Kearney, even out far west at the Nebraska Agricultural Technology Unit, and then Omaha, Lincoln, and then the Medical Center in Lincoln, you start to see that about $1 billion of your economic impact in 2021 were outside of the regions where Omaha and Lincoln are. That's pretty amazing. And about 300 million out in the western part of the state. And what you're seeing here is what the individual campuses mean in terms of their economic impact and the amount of jobs that they create. The largest generator is the Lincoln campus, and then second would be the Nebraska Medical Center campus, and then you go through UNO, UNK, and then the NCTA. One thing that I feel is so important, I've just done some other studies this winter for university systems that like to call each university a separate university. And they then piece it together in a study, and it doesn't make sense because all the universities thought they were separate and competing with each other. And here you have this one university, 4 campuses, and a 500-mile territory. And I feel that that's such a much better way, and I actually think it shows how much stronger you are in this model when you look across the state. 1 out of 27 Nebraskans are employed. I said that before. That would mean every time you see 30 Nebraskans, one of their jobs is either directly or indirectly supported by the university system. That's pretty amazing. Next slide. There they are. And you can see that the jobs are generated statewide by the campuses, and this is the student spending, and student spending is one of the 3 or 4 drivers of the economic impact. You see that really clearly here in Lincoln when you drive around, all of the downtown development that has occurred because the university is across the street. And you also see the investments that have been made to support housing and economic development in each of the campuses, including in Kearney and in Omaha. And I had worked on a project in the Blackstone area in Omaha, and if it wasn't for student spending and the medical center, all of that development in the Midtown Omaha corridor, all the way down to Midtown Crossing, certainly wouldn't be there. So you can't take credit for that in your economic impact, but just take a look and see how Omaha and Lincoln have prospered because of university spending. A big part of the economic impact is visitors, and you might say, well, there were no visitors during COVID, or there were very few visitors, but actually visitation continues. There's vendors, there's contractors, you were still building buildings, you were still actively engaged with people. You didn't have the big athletic events perhaps, or you didn't have as many, but in that COVID period by 21, when we were measuring things, things had gotten a lot more back to normal. So the visitation is an important part of your spending. You also have residents at UNMC, and we have such a big, strong medical center with so many residents that they actually, just on their own, we estimate, have about $165 million economic impact, because these folks are paid and they live and they work and they are engaged in the Omaha community. So we did a little pull out on that. Athletics is a huge part of the economic impact. We have been able over the last 20 years to maybe do 30 or 40 athletic-only economic impact studies. And what is amazing to me was that you are head and shoulders in economic impact above the other places. We just did USC, University of Southern California. We've done Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri just last year. And I think this is the largest economic impact we've seen. And it's so much more than just football. Even though football is a major driver, you have an athletic infrastructure and ecosystem that's statewide and very important. And I know people always say, because you don't have professional sports, you have collegiate sports, but you have collegiate sports on steroids, and it's driving a huge amount of the economic impact. So there's a lot of things. Oh, did I say steroids? That is probably not intended. That's okay. Just keep moving.
It's a metaphor, a metaphor.
Of course, always a doping scandal in the figure skating. Another news from this morning. So we have 2.9 billion in economic impact, not included annually, not included in your 5.8 of alumni spending money throughout the state and having those dollars from their spending that stay in the state of Nebraska. That's really part of your economic impact. We don't include it because your operational impact of 5.8 is one data point, but you also have almost 3 billion in Nebraskans that are working. So if you look at the folks that are engaged in your economy, in medicine, in law, in engineering, in education, you look at folks throughout the state that are alumni, they're driving the local economy. So your biggest impact in the local economies, especially where you don't have a campus, is going to be your alumni, and also extension, because you have extension in all your counties, and then you also have investment, and you have spin-off businesses, and all the businesses and farmers, ranchers, and small businesses across the state that benefit from university expertise. You're going to see that in counties and communities like Hay Springs and Chadron, Alliance, and Broken Bow, use all my Nebraska towns I know, and you're going to see that all of those places have alumni and investment that happens because of the university. And also about 100 million in donations and voluntary services are generated each year. My footnote there is we use national standards. So I always tell people in Nebraska that if I'm saying 102 million in donations and voluntary services generated on average for your faculty, students, staff, and add something to that, because we know that Nebraskans are more generous. Now, my final slide talks about the ecosystem of the University of Nebraska. This is where there's so much excitement in the state right now, and that is all the things that you've all planted in Kearney and in Omaha and Lincoln and out west. We're working right now on an economic study for expansion in Scottsbluff of health sciences, also in Kearney. We're seeing how the Davis Global Center and the IXL, which is just the single best facility I've ever been to in that space. Some of the work you're doing in water and food, extension, and all your business development programs. The Buffett Cancer Center, we're doing an economic impact on that. And you can just see on the slide. This slide can't hold, we need 20 slides. Ted, we need more slides to show all of the things in this, what I'm going to call ecosystem. So the university's impact really can be seen as a $5.8 billion rock that hits the pond. But all those ripples and all the things we're not measuring are all these additional things that you're doing that are out there with the Department of Defense, the things that you're doing with the next project, the things you're doing with some of the new technologies and innovation centers. I know President Carter yesterday was presenting on some really bold, big initiatives. None of those are included. Some of those haven't really even happened yet. And many of those will be happening in the future. So I was saying last night, kind of in closing, that you really are well positioned for mid-century. 2050 is closer than 1990. And I think 1990 seems like it was just yesterday. So I would say that your mid-century platform is in really good shape. So as your state is continuing to prosper, the university prospers, and you really can't have one without the other. So I was going to turn it over to our friend Ted Carter to say some things that he wants to say, and then we're going to open it up for questions and comments. The only other thing I want to say, and I said this before, this is just to show that the economic impact is really statewide, and about $1 billion is outside of the two larger communities. So,
Paul,
your comments. Thank
I'm
you.
almost speechless. That was exceptionally well presented, a complex topic, and one that needs to be told in something of a story format, which I think you did in an exceptional manner. Your team at Trip Umbach is exceptional. They're nationwide. You have an amazing reputation, and I'm very much appreciative that you've put this great work together for us. For everybody here, to include the media that's present, those that are listening, there's a lot of interesting things that we're going to be talking about today, and maybe this one won't get the top of the headline, but it ought to, because this is vision turned into a strategy that's now turning into where the rubber hits the road, and we're seeing the data. What's most impressive to me about this whole thing, and even though this covers 3 years, 2 of which have been in the COVID eras, we really don't know what our impact would have been had we not gone through a COVID era. I mean, as you highlight the impact of sports here in Nebraska, we had a year of COVID where we had virtually nobody in our football stadium, nobody in attendance of sports, and yet we're still seeing that incredible impact. There is a success story here that all Nebraskans should be proud of. Yes, there is only one university system in our state, but this impact touches all of post-secondary education, and I would argue even in the primary education system, because we are all interconnected. The takeaway for me is that Nebraskans get an unbelievable return on their investment at the University of Nebraska. I'm proud of that 7-1, now turned to 9-1. I'm not satisfied there. I know my chancellors are not. I know the board is not. I expect that by the year 2050, we'll be 15-1. And I think next year we'll be 10-1. We may not have the data to show that, but some of the things that you've already talked about, they're already on the drawing board and we're ready to go. So I guess my point is, for any dollar that comes either through charity, philanthropy, through the state, through federal funding, we're not here at the University of Nebraska to make money for the university. We're here to make money for the economic impact and growth of our state and for the success of our students. There are other impacts here that cannot be captured. You highlighted some of that, and I don't want that to be lost. Some of the things that we do through extension, our healthcare, the opportunities that we're creating for young people to change their lives, those are just some of the things that we can't capture through dollars and cents, but we know make a difference. So again, I want to say a most sincere thanks to Paul and your team for bringing this to us. Nobody gets to tell a story of success better than somebody else, and I'm appreciative that you've done that for the University of Nebraska. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair and see if there's any questions for Mr. Umbach.
Any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. We have a bill in front of the legislature with regard to internships, and internships are extraordinarily important, and they are offered primarily to college students while they're in school to help them. Part of the appropriation also goes towards offsetting the cost of education, so we can help provide our students with a affordable education. And believe me, we're most grateful to the legislature for that appropriation. I think it's important to try to place some sort of an economic analysis on internships, because if the appropriation is to help offset the cost of education to enable students to go, and we're promoting internships, if we don't retain those kids that we've helped offset their cost of education, if we don't retain them in the state of Nebraska, our return on that investment is zero. And I think that's a very, very important concept when we're thinking about the internship bill. I think it's a very important concept when we're thinking about retaining young people just to fill some of the vacancies within our state, because as great as those numbers look, we got 60,000 jobs-ish that are still open and in our state, and it's really, really an important it's an important piece of the economic puzzle that the university plays.
Well, I want to just comment and say that there could be really no better investment than in a program like that, because it has 3 or 4 benefits. One benefit is it makes those companies stronger. They're not just doing this as a favor, they're getting the talent that they need to make their company stronger. The second is that you have the opportunity to retain, and that goes to that alumni economic impact, because you want that to continue to grow, because if you're not retaining people, that could actually sag over time as alumni aren't working anymore. And the third is something I think really powerful that people don't think about, and that is especially with underserved communities and students from disadvantaged backgrounds. There's a lot of analysis that have been done on the 5 tiers. And if you're in the lower tier socioeconomically, there's a great cost to government and society, and also lower life expectancy and lower productivity. But when you can move from the 1st tier to the 5th tier or to the 4th tier, in that movement, and there's a lot of studies on this, you have so much greater economic drive into the economy and lower cost in public and social services. So the state working on a program to keep students into internships that stay also allow those students to grow into their careers, make more money, and not need public assistance, which is a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, and then the alumni impact goes on top. So yeah, so if that's helpful for people to kind of look at it from an economic lens, there's a winning program.
Paul, I really, really appreciate your work, and I can't help myself, but, you know, I do think that Nebraska would love to have you move your business to Nebraska.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the Haymarket area, it's wonderful.
If you had your calling out at Seward, they'd love you there as well, so it would be good. But I had maybe 2 pieces that I'm curious on. One would be this board developed a vision of One Nebraska about 6 years ago, and you spoke to that briefly, and then that impact on the improving of the return on the dollar, number one, and then number 2, this board was courageous with President Carter and the chancellors to be the first university in the country to say, we're open, we're doing business, we're responding to our students. 80% polled said we have to be in class. Yeah. I'm curious if there's anything in your data bank of the good that did compared to places that didn't have that courage.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, you folks, by staying open, help not only your economy, but you did a lot for downstream mental health and healthcare costs. You saved your state 5 years of a crisis that could have been horrible. If you look at other states and countries that have completely locked down, they'll never be able to pay for the costs that took in terms of the mental health and the social health of people. But I think even more importantly, you also spent a lot more money because of COVID. All those sanitation stations, all those little things you put on the ground that say stand here, all of the testing and these testing sites and all of that, all of our clients in America last year in 2020 and 2021 spent more, but by staying open, you also made your economy stronger. One thing that's not in your $5.8 billion, Ted got me to think about what's not included, is the 4.5 additional economic impact of Nebraska medicine. And more than that, if you count the affiliates like Children's and the VA. So if you think about what your medical center has done as a unified medical center, that is really, really probably the biggest single driver of the state's economy. And during COVID, we really saw that the medical center was able to stay open, and it didn't go through what so many other medical centers did around the country, where they closed pretty much and let only COVID patients in, but they kept the engines going, and that was very important as well.
Why is that not? Why is that the medical center, the full comprehensive medical center, not counted? I mean, it can't exist without us.
Right, exactly. Well, I got good news for you. We have an economic impact study that includes all the academic medicine in Omaha in a separate study, and that study's coming out next week. So we have a UNMC economic impact study that shows the whole thing that means. So you'll get that separately, and then there's also separate reports for others. So I want to be clear that we have a report, and in the full report we do mention these additional economic impacts for UNMC, for Nebraska medicine as well. So
I have a question too, like Ted talked about maybe going next year 10-1, whatever. My question is as we plan ahead for the future, and we have this big influx of federal dollars come in and it really gets things rolling, well, what happens, what goes up must come down. And does that snowball itself when those dollars dry up? And I've been part of this budget where we've cut $40 million. And how do you plan for that? Or does it snowball itself when those dollars are burned up and spent and then not replaced?
that's a really great question, Paul. I would say from our experience over the last 35 years that there are times when the public sector and the private sector are fueling. There are times when you're getting, this is the most money I think in our whole collective lives in this room we've ever seen fall from heaven. I was joking with somebody when $1 trillion falls from heaven, every puddle has a couple billion in it. Okay, so it's the most money that we've ever seen. I think what we've found over time is that there are cycles, and I think the challenge that you're touching on is a challenge for everybody in this room, and that is to make sure that the private sector can accelerate, so when the federal money and the public sector is not driving as much, the private sector continue to drive up. And if you look at the cycles over the last 100 years, you'll see that that's happened. But you have some challenges. And one of your big challenges is workforce and keeping people in Nebraska. And that goes to the other point that Tim had made. And if you really start thinking about it, Nebraska has always been very thin in terms of unemployment or employable people. You're always at the lowest tier of available workforce. And you mentioned 60,000 unfilled jobs. It won't be that businesses don't want to be here. It really, can there be the talent to fuel that next wave as this money gets spent? So I think that everything we can do in talent development, internships, all the work you're doing, but if I was pushing one button for you for 2050, you're going to have to grow the young workforce, and you're going to have to transform it. And it won't only be in Lincoln and Omaha and Kearney and North Platte. It's going to have to be in rural Nebraska, where communities are losing population and they're losing services and they're losing the energy that used to be there in that economy. That's what I would push. And if you don't push that, then you're exactly right. The money will flow through, and the university won't continue to raise up the economy. I know you can do it because you've always done it.
I found it way easier to spend the money than it is to cut it, so.
Yeah. I always like the gas pedal more than the brake.
Any other questions?
Mr. Umbach, first of all, I appreciated being able to chat with you last night and being able to pick your brain and having your perspective of the university and the state. And with your experience on all these other colleges and universities analyzing their economic impact, how do you foresee it to be most effective for our university to communicate our impact throughout the state and being able to effectively say to constituents throughout the state, this is how we are helping you, even if you're not on campus?
That's a very important question. First of all, I want to say I really enjoyed speaking with you and your colleague last night, and I have grandkids now, and I would hope they could have a pediatrician 1/10 is loving and kind as you are. So that's wonderful to meet you last night. I think what you have to do, and I've been at this a while, and that is that there are certain people that really love numbers, and you got to give them numbers. And there are people that don't love numbers and they just want stories, and you have to give them stories. And there are people that like a statewide story and statewide numbers, and some people don't want that. So one of the things we've done this year, and we didn't say this before, is we've broken down the numbers by county, by legislative district. So when you're really telling this story, I'm going to go to, I had relatives in Hay Springs, so I'll use Hay Springs and, Alliance and that area, that beautiful area of the state. You might want to go there and really talk about the local businesses that are owned and operated by alum. You might want to, at that point, start talking about extension and the programs that they offer in that area. You might talk about the fact that some of their young people are going to now be going to Scottsbluff for nursing and for allied health and for dentistry or a dental residency. Oh my gosh, that's close by. They understand that. And that might be a better story. Now, last night we had a wonderful award given to your incredible chamber president. Well, the Omaha story might be told through the chamber telling it. And maybe that's better because then it's the chamber telling it, it's not the university telling it. And there's a partner talking about it. You might find that as Regents, wherever you live and work, you can take this story to Rotary Club and to other groups and organizations that you work with. So I think that you have to just stay at every one of those levels. So it's almost like this way, stories and numbers, and you find a way to really, and what I have found the best is communicating to say, you know that there are 30 people here today in this room. One of you is employed either directly or indirectly by the state, and no matter what community you would go to. Now, that's over the whole state. Now, when you're in Lincoln, it might be 1 out of every 4 or 6, okay? And when you're in Omaha, it might be 1 out of every 8. But notice how when you break it down, Taylor, you just start to say, well, I get this. I am paying attention. You've made it. So the 5.8 should be used sparingly. Ted will use it because that's a good number for really the audience that he deals with. But when you're talking to a patient in your future and a family, it might be about the fact that you, because you were trained at UMC, are providing better care, and there's a better value in your care as a physician. That's a very different story. So I hope that was helpful. And I'm taking way too much of your time.
Any other questions? Thank you, Paul. That was enlightening and really, really good news. So
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You all have a good rest of the meeting. We'll get out of your way and let you do the real work.
Thank you. At the beginning of each board meeting, we take time to recognize those persons who often don't receive the recognition they deserve. The Board of Regents believes that it's vitally important that we acknowledge your commitment as well as your contributions to the university. You have been nominated by either a supervisor or peer to honor in and itself. As Kudos recipients are announced, please come to the podium, join the regent making the presentation. Following each presentation, we will take a picture that will appear on our website. The president, chancellor, and recipient's family and supporters are invited to be in that photo. First Kudos recipient is Mary Chinook Pestrosky from the University of Nebraska at Kearney. The award will be presented by Regent Schaefer.
Hi, good morning. Oh, thank you.
I'm going to like to honor you with this this plaque here.
Thank you.
Say a few kind words about you.
Certainly.
All right, great. Thank you. How about if we switch spots?
Okay.
I'm pleased to recognize Mary Chinook Petrosky, Chief Compliance Officer at the University of Nebraska at Kearney. Originally from Alliance, Nebraska, Mary received her Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from Nebraska Wesleyan University and graduated with distinction in 1987 from the University of Nebraska College of Law. How'd that go for you, from one lawyer to another?
It was great.
Yeah?
It's a wonderful career.
It's a great education.
It is.
Mary formerly served as Director of Human Resources and was UNK's first Chief Diversity Officer. Now, as Chief Compliance Officer, she manages conflict of interest, conflict of commitment policy implementation, and administers the Family and Medical Leave Act process, and also manages Ethics Point confidential reporting system, enforces the non-discrimination policy, investigates civil rights complaints, oversees Title IX procedures, serves as Adults with Disabilities Coordinator, and oversees 2 full-time employees, the Compliance Manager and Title IX Specialist. Mary also fulfills extensive campus and university-wide service responsibilities. Her day-to-day responsibilities are substantial, but Mary's overall accomplishments are even more profound. She was responsible for creating UNK's Office of Equity and Compliance in 2017, shaping its mission and developing the staff, an experience she describes as challenging but rewarding. She manages the office in a way that supports individuals. She ensures campus compliance with policy and legal requirements, and she faces obstacles with patience, perspective, and clarity while adapting to constantly evolving local and external environment impacts. Mary's supervisor, Senior Advisor to the Chancellor, John Falconer, describes her as a professional. She knows her business and manages her office and gets things done. You sound like a doer.
I am a doer.
All right, that's awesome.
I sit around.
She handles difficult situations and keeps an eye on the long term and thinks strategically. Her peers value her expertise, and she engages across the NU system. Mary is direct when describing concerns and is flexible in adapting to an ever-changing context. Given her consistently outstanding work, professional expertise, and efforts to make UNK a better place, the Board of Regents is pleased to honor Mary Petrowski with her at this time. And with her today is her supervisor, John Falconer, Senior Advisor to the Chancellor. Congratulations. Would you like this? If you were to come up here, we'll get you.
Congratulations, Mary. Regent Claire will provide the Kudos Award for Colette Mccurdy from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln.
Or not. All right, the Board of Regents is pleased to present a Kudos Award to Colette Mccurdy, Director of Student Accounts at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Colette is an exceptional example of a leader who always leads by example and has a gold standard for customer service. Colette has maintained a steady presence on campus throughout the pandemic to ensure her staff has the necessary resources to support and address the high volume of student account-related questions. Additionally, Colette has been an exemplary leader within business and finance, embracing both university-wide initiatives and a departmental commitment to prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Utilizing available internal resources and seeking out external professional development opportunities, she is consistently challenging her staff to participate and apply what they have learned to their day-to-day work. Joining Colette today is her husband, Tim Mccurdy. Please join me in thanking Colette for her dedication to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Colette. Regent Cradaville will present the Kudos Award to Linda Cunningham from University of Nebraska Medical Center.
So if this isn't a sign of the times, I've been in weekly meetings with Miss Cunningham for about the last year and a half, and this is the first time we've met in person. So it's just a real treat to be able to have you in person.
Go ahead and shake hands.
Yeah, exactly. Hand sanitizer in the pocket. But on behalf of the Board of Regents, it's just a treat to be able to present a Kudos Award to Miss Linda Cunningham, who's our Associate Director of Human Resources at UNMC. In this role, Linda really leads UNMC's employee relations, our employee training and development, benefits, and childhood development center teams. During the pandemic, Linda has been taking on challenges and difficult situations with professionalism, determination, and compassion. She helped create UNMC's COVID-19 vaccination policy and helped manage the COVID-19 vaccination exemption process, which, as everybody can imagine and has read about, is a very thorough and difficult process in and of itself. She worked diligently with the Health Security Office, Academic Affairs team, the college administrators to resolve potential issues and communicate next steps with each of our employees at UNMC and managing compliance throughout this process. She spent hours both explaining the education initiatives and educating individuals on UNMC's policies regarding working from home, masking, and the vaccination process. Said one nominator, her fortitude has been inspirational. Another nominator acknowledged that Ms. Cunningham's ability to hear a myriad of concerns, noting it's a lot to deal with, and somehow she does it with positivity, discernment for what is needed, and abounding love. She is selfless in serving others, and that's why we all need to live up to that on a daily basis. During her more than 20 years on UNMC's campus, Ms. Cunningham has spearheaded Culture Fest, which celebrates diversity at UNMC and for all of its students and employees. And it initiated training and programming around employee feedback and a really neat program that I actually experienced while I was an employee at UNMC before starting medical school, a program that allows folks to give feedback and acknowledge outstanding performance within the UNMC on a web-based platform. And said one nominator, Ms. Cunningham has the innate ability to consistently turn ideas into action and put creativity to work and develop strategies for innovation. And through my experience working with her, even though she really represents a lot of the employees at UNMC, she also advocates for the well-being of students, which I think is notable in and of its own right. So we're very lucky to have you at UNMC. Absolutely. And today, Ms. Cunningham is accompanied by her son, Christopher Cunningham, and Susan Kraft Mann, our interim Vice Chancellor of Business and Finance. Please join me in thanking Ms. Cunningham for her innovation, dedication, and commitment to helping UNMC employees succeed and thrive in the workplace.
Congratulations, Linda. The UNO Environmental Services Team is our final recipient today. Their award will be presented by Regent Hemmer.
Well, the Board of Regents is proud to present a Kudos Award to Environmental Services, a part of UNO's Facilities, Planning, and Management team. Larry Morgan, Executive Director of Campus Facilities, and Craig McDonald, Manager of Custodial Service, are in attendance to accept this award. Environmental Services, which operates and maintains UNO's campus, has gone above and beyond its duties to keep UNO's facilities sanitized and safe throughout the pandemic. To keep the campus as safe as possible, the team has routinely cleaned, sanitized, and monitored each building as students, faculty, and staff were able to return to in-person learning, teaching, and working. In addition, they quickly adapted to frequent changes in safety measures and priorities and used their knowledge of supplies, protocols, and products to prevent further risk of exposure to COVID-19. The team collaboratively cleaned the dorms at the height of the pandemic and was proactive in assisting anyone who needed help. Through their continued efforts, students, staff, and faculty have been able to return to campus as safe as possible and have been able to continue exceptional in-person education and research. They continue to make the changes necessary to ensure a clean and safe environment for all those who have returned to campus, their nominator said. We would like to recognize them for their hard work and to let them know that we are grateful for their math spirit in pushing on through very difficult times. In addition, the unit's nominator said the Environmental Services team is always welcoming and friendly, and willing to help when issues arise despite the extra workload they are dealing with because of the pandemic. If ever there was an example of showing resilience and positive collective endeavors, the Environmental Services team has done this. Please join me in congratulating Larry, Craig, and the Environmental Services team.
Congratulations. Well, our Kudos guests are most welcome to stay and observe the balance of the business meeting. If you wish to leave, we take no offense. You may do so at this time, but thank you for coming. So at this time, it's time for the succession of the chairmanship. And just for a few notes, I thought about a year ago, and listening to the radio, they talked about a year ago being 20 to 30 below zero.
Yeah.
What a difference a year makes. It was changed by record-setting warmth this year. Our company has a strategic planning session. We canceled it, and we thought, well, we'll do it close. We'll go to the Embassy Suites downtown. Lost power. Lincoln, a lot of places couldn't keep up. The plants froze in the Embassy Suite. It was so cold in there. But I would like to take time to thank everyone that's helped me with this year as being chairman, and it's been a great experience for me. But I do want you to know that we're going to be in great hands with a young man standing behind us. He says he's not running for re-election, but we'll have a great year as Bob is our chairman. Thank you.
Take time to thank Paul. If you've been in the position that he and I have been in, and some of you, when you step in this role and this chair, it requires a little more effort. And physical evidence are home, it may not work like that.
You better watch out.
Congratulations.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
The next 10 minutes, we'll be moving stuff back and forth from one end to the other here. But, all right, I think the first item of business that we need to move forward with now is the selection of a vice chair for this year.
Point of clarification, if
Yes,
I
sir.
may, Chairman. I noticed that one of our student regents had to leave early. She's sick, and I noticed that Regent O'Connor is not be able to be here. Does her vote count in proxy, or do you have to be present to vote?
You need to be present to vote. It would require 4 votes to elect the vice chair, with 7 regents voting. The student regents express their opinion separately from that.
Okay, that's unfortunate. She could not do it by Zoom or phone.
We cannot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I would accept nominations for the position of vice president.
Vice chair.
Or vice chair. Yeah, sorry.
Chair, I have a nomination to place. I'd like to place the name of Tim Clare up for vice chair. And
Okay, we have a nomination. Tim Clare, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Are there other nominations?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would nominate Regent Schaefer.
Schaefer, is there a second to that?
Second.
Second? All right. Then we have 2 nominations, and so need to look and see where we are and what we need to do here. So we do this by little things you've passed out here, right? Every one of the elected regents should have some little blue tabs here. And we would ask that you cast your vote, and we will pick those up, count them, and be back in touch with you shortly.
As Regent said, Ferris said, Section 1.2 of the standing rules provides that when there's more than one nominee for the office, elections are conducted by secret ballot. There are blue sheets before the elected regents to record your vote, and yellow sheets in front of the student regents to collect your student opinion. Shelley, Harold, and I will collect the ballots and count them, and the number of votes will be entered into the minutes for each candidate.
And if you misspell the last name, you know, your vote won't count, so. But I think it's okay. Fairly simple. Tim and Rob, that'd work easier. While we're getting our mechanical work done here, let me just let you all know that you'll recall, I asked for some preferences from each of you about committees, and I think everybody responded to that. Some of you actually even put your name on the sheet that you gave me. Others, it took a little more work to figure out the handwriting and figure out who that was responding, but we have it, I think, pulled together now. So the first major job that I have today is to go ahead and make those committee assignments, and so our goal will be to get that done, and by the first of next week at the latest, we hope then to have everything out so that y'all will know what committees you're going to be on, when the next meetings will. Okay, Mr. Secretary.
The results of the ballots are the student regent opinion is 3 votes for Regent Clare. The results of the elected regent's votes are 4 votes for Regent Clare, 3 votes for Regent Schaefer.
Okay, then we declare Claire as our vice chair for, congratulations, Tim. Alrighty. I think we are at the point now where our bylaws require that we do hold a hearing whenever there's an amendment to our bylaws or standing rules. And so we have an, excuse me, we have an amendment to the standing rules relating to Section 5 and improvements to the public comment period. In the past, we have allowed 5 minutes maximum for someone who comes to either speak on an item that is not on the agenda, on today's agenda, or is on the agenda. We try to separate those. And it had also spelled out that we had a maximum limitation of 30 minutes. So basically what this is doing, it's removing the maximum limitation and dropping the time from 5 to 3. So we're just simply saying we're going to have 3 minutes, and we're not going to put a stop point of 30 minutes on it. We'll allow it to go as long as people are here that want to be heard on what we're doing. So is there anyone present who wishes to be heard on this matter today? Not? So we would declare that the hearing is closed, and I will turn this over to President Carter now. We'll look at our agenda items going forward, and walk us through it if you would, please, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Ferris, and congratulations to Vice Chair Claire. My remarks here this morning before we get into the agenda will be somewhat brief, but I just want to start off by saying how excited I am about the new year. We heard some tremendous report this morning by Trip Umbach Company, and if I could sum up our agenda for 2022, I think I would use 2 words. The first would be growth, and the second would be impact. You heard about our economic impact. It's just a tremendous success story for the University of Nebraska and what it does for the state of Nebraska. Paul Umbach did a great job of going through that. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so I like data. And the one piece of data that I will translate from going from a $1 in $7 return on investment impact 3 years ago to now $1 in $9 return on investment impact today, that's a 27.6% improvement. I think anybody that looks at their bank account or their 401 would be pretty happy with a 27.6% improvement, and that's where we are right now. But there are, as Regent Claire pointed out and others have pointed out this morning, there are some urgent challenges facing Nebraska, and it's clear to me that we've got to keep growing and keep moving with our impact. Workforce, arguably the top on our list of challenges. At our last Board of Regents meeting, we heard from Brian Sloan from the Chamber of Commerce, and he talked about the roughly 60,000, somewhere between 50,000 and 80,000 jobs that the state of Nebraska currently today can't fill. It's a generational challenge. And I would agree with Mr. Sloan that we cannot close that gap without the University of Nebraska. So that is probably one of our top priorities in how we're going to move forward. We know many of these jobs are in healthcare, particularly in the rural parts of our state. Just consider that 14 Nebraska counties don't have a primary care physician today. With workforce shortages like that, rural Nebraskans can't get equal access to quality health care. And when our rural communities can't thrive, Nebraska can't thrive. We also have shortages in STEM fields, computer science, engineering, and technology. Agriculture, it is still our state's #1 industry, and we, as a land-grant university founded now some 153 years ago, know that. More important than ever as we face the question of how we feed a growing population. Public health, we've lived through 2+ years now of COVID-19, and are we going to be prepared for what the next pandemic might be as we go from pandemic to eventually an endemic? National security, the reality is there will always be those who want to harm us as Americans. Nebraska is helping to lead the fight against terrorism, but that work will never end and it'll continue, and we want to be a partner in that. So how will we solve these very urgent, complex, very significant challenges? And again, those two words, by growing and having impact, and doing that by working together. In 2020, we rolled out our 5-year strategic plan for the university system, developed through input from this board, our chancellors, faculty, staff, student, and partners across the entire state. We said that our plan would be about action. And I'm here to tell you today, at the beginning of 2022, after 18 short months from when we rolled that out, it's remarkable to reflect on what we've accomplished, from the launch of Nebraska Promise, to our 2-year tuition freeze, to our historic deferred maintenance initiative made possible with a partnership with the state, to the launch of a new rural prosperity initiative, and so much more. What's even more remarkable is that we achieved all of that while facing the pandemic head on. Becoming one of the first institutions in the country to reopen and staying open, as we've already discussed at length about that economic impact, but also while doing this and keeping our faculty, staff, and students safe during the height of this pandemic. It's a great credit to the commitment and ingenuity of our entire faculty and staff. We also said that our 5-year strategy would be a living document, something we would evolve in real time as the needs of our students and state evolved. So this year, we're going to be taking another look at our plan, the goal for a University of Nebraska Strategy 2.0. And that highest focus is going to be on student affordability. If we want to solve our workforce challenges, that starts with making sure every qualified student can access a University of Nebraska education. Affordability will be key to future enrollment growth and workforce development. Working closely with chancellors on strategies to grow enrollment on campus and to our outstanding online programs from within Nebraska and outside of our state's borders. We're going to have a stronger focus on expanding internship opportunities for our students. We've been talking about internships since the day I got here. This is the year that we're going to put that rubber on the road and make internships work. Whether we get state dollars for it or not, I am committing to everybody through our chancellors that we are going to make internships for our students with the business community work. Partnerships with public and private partners. We are exceptional at this already, and we will continue to get better. Continued research growth building on major successes, like UNL's recently announced $51 million National Science Foundation to advance subatomic physics work, with a focus on key strengths like agriculture, cancer and public health, national security, and biomechanics. I'm very excited about the Arpa proposals that we've brought forward. The chancellors and I will be testifying next week before the Appropriations Committee, and I'm excited about that for a chance to have our voices heard in front of the legislature. And finally, I really appreciate the board's support. We've worked exceptionally well together, going over some very tough challenges, and many of which we'll put on the table today. And I look forward to updating all of you, not only on the progress of our university, but where we're going to go forward on this legislative season and the years ahead. So now I'll turn it back to the chairman.
All right, thank you, sir. We have been contacted by 4 people, I think, who asked to speak on topics that are not on today's agenda. I will call those that we have and ask you to come forward if you would, please. I think we need to make a little motion to bring this into sync with where we're headed here.
I move that the Board of Regents waive those portions of the standing rules which limit the total time period for public comment to 30 minutes for all speakers, and further move that each speaker shall be permitted 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. Rob, is there a second? Second. Second. Any question or discussion? Call the roll, please.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer? Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer? Yes. Regent Stark? Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Clare?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, we had 4 people, I think, who contacted us. Requires 24 hours notice in order to come and talk on an item that is not on the agenda. 2 of them, I think, at least have signed in. We'll see if the others might have snuck in but didn't sign in. Sheila Hubbard, are you here today, Sheila? If you'd like to come forward and speak, your floor is yours.
Thank you, Board of Regents and President Carter, for allowing this time of input. I was 3 hours late being able to speak at the last meeting, getting my name in, and so they put me right down, and I appreciate that. I am here to thank the university, which is my alma mater, for always having policies to increase diversity and inclusion and all of these things, but I am here today as a Nebraska Republican and a professional woman of faith to tell UNL Chancellor Dr. Ronnie Green how much I respect and trust his leadership for growing the university and making it the best university possible. And I really found out that it is even better than I knew. And I'm here to say I love the commitment to action policy. And I want it known that as a woman of faith and a Nebraska Republican, I needed to be here to tell you how much I support it. Because there are archaic ideas that have become barriers that are just sort of an undercurrent, even though we've had just wonderful positive policies to include diversity and inclusion. There have been these undercurrent ideas that clear back when I got my advanced degree in the late 70s from the university. I had to call home and say, Dad, I just don't understand. And my dad, a strong Republican, said, well, it's up to you to feel uncomfortable about these things happening, and that will make you have a passion to change things. And so I've always tried to step in and change things. 30 years later, I have 3 kids that attend the university and receive excellent education, but they're saying the same undercurrent things that they feel are unjust to people that come from underserved populations. And I think, my gosh, why haven't these been rooted out? And then, I had an adopted grandson through my camp work that in 2015 said he was coming from another state because of people that he had worked with from the University of Nebraska at camp for 10 years. And I was so excited because this is a hardworking young man. And he leaves after a year because he didn't feel he was given opportunities. Those undercurrent, archaic things caused him to leave here. And now he's a successful young professional in another state, and I think he might have been in Nebraska if we'd have had that commitment to action. When my sons heard about it, who are part of the brain drain that left too, they said, this makes Nebraska worth coming back for. So I thought, thank you for this commitment to action. And I am so excited as a Republican and as a Christian and a professional woman to support it. I must say I've had some fellow
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go Big Red, and thank you, Ronnie Green.
Okay, thank you, Sheila, for being here today. Todd Paczoza, did I get close on that?
Morning. Thank you for letting me speak. My original intention was to come speak about mask mandates. After what I see up here, I don't think anybody believes in masks. Please extend this privilege right to our students. My son took a chemistry test last night, masked up. He's in chemistry now, masked up. Go to biology this afternoon, masked up. Please extend this to my student. This weekend would be a great time to do that. My other big topic would be the CRT. Thank you, Dr. Pillen, for your resolution on CRT. I think this is just a way to hide the way we really feel. There's racism, sure it exists, but it's not to the point at Nebraska. Racism isn't taught in a 3-hour class in a school. It's taught at home. My kids have never been tolerated to be that, and that's my job, not your job, to raise with the right morals and to get along with other people. We enjoy Cinco de Mayo, we go to Chinese restaurants, there is no racism in that case. And it's not your right or duty to teach my kid how to feel about other people. What you're doing, your theory, your CRT theory, is very racist, divisive, and just hatred. It's a terrible policy. In an article, Chancellor Green and President Carter said, that the resolution by Pillen and Ricketts is a violation of academic freedom. There's a very good black neurosurgeon called Ben Carson, Dr. Carson, and just last week he talked about this, about the Supreme Court decision comment made by Biden. And he says, we need a Supreme Court where we have the best candidates. To create the kind of situation in the highest court, college, in the land is really abominable and very detrimental to our freedoms. That's Ben Carson, a well-renowned neurosurgeon. Abominable, what does it mean? Hatred, damnable, cursed, diabolical, disgusting, revolting. That's what he says about these kind of policies. He also says we should build on the good things and the progress that we've made rather than always harping what negatives are. So why don't we teach class about Ben Carson? Anybody ever watched the movie Helping Hands about Ben Carson, how he came from, his mother wouldn't let him live the feel sorry for me card. She made him get out and she made him go and get an education.
30 seconds.
She says education, my dad always told me this, the one thing I'm going to give you is an education because nobody can take that from you. Nobody. And so, you know, maybe before you open up somebody else's closet, you ought to look in your own closet, go down through your academia and look at president, chancellor, vice chancellor, your deans. Diversity might be lacking in that area. So before you look in somebody else's closet, make sure your closet's clean. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We had two other people who contacted us who did not sign in today, but you might be here and just simply forgot to sign in as you came in. Alia Ganick happened to be present. Madison Zucco. Not present. Okay. So I think those are the individuals that did contact us to speak on items that are not on today's agenda. Our standing rules also provide that anyone who wants to speak on an item that is on the agenda for action today, regardless of any advance notice, may do so. Each person wanting to speak will be given 3 minutes to make their remarks. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board on a topic that is part of today's agenda? If so, we will ask you to come forward, identify yourself, complete the sign-in sheet before you leave if you haven't already done so. I have some who have signed in, so let me just call those out and then we'll see if there's anyone else who's here that hasn't signed in. Jonathan Drozda, correct?
Hello, I am Jonathan Drozda, a senior from UNK studying both philosophy and psychology, majoring in both. And I am addressing the anticipation to remove the philosophy department. I handed out packets to you all. The top of the packet has a copy of the letter sent to you all from the American Philosophical Association. If you look at page 4 of the handout, you will find the results to a petition that myself and 9 others wrote last semester, which now has 179 signatures, all of which are present in front of you. I expect you are familiar with the existence of this petition as I emailed many of its results to the Board of Regents this last semester. On page 4, a dual major in molecular biology and philosophy said, quote, so long as critical thinkers pass through UNK, there will be a need for philosophy. So long as people endowed with freedom of choice of even the slightest degree pass through UNK, there will be a need for philosophy. The department has the ability to ignite a lifelong love of wisdom. On page 11, dual major in comprehensive computer science and philosophy said, quote, philosophy teaches you how to examine your life and pursue what is truly good. This helps create better people, which in turn creates a better society. End quote. A student majoring in English said the following on page 5 of that packet. Quote, philosophy taught me more how to write, Philosophy taught me more how to be a strong writer than any English class I've taken at UNK, end quote. On page 16 of that packet, a UNK alumnus said, quote, "The philosophy department opened my eyes in a way which I believe no other department could," end quote. On page 24 of that packet, a music department faculty member said, quote, "I always know when students of philosophy are in my courses. They are astute, attentive, and serious, and they consistently ask the best questions of any student in class. It would be a serious loss to UNK if we lose this major," end quote.
30 seconds.
Also on page 24, a member of the chemistry department said, who specializes in biochemistry, quote, I believe that for UNK to truly be a liberal arts institution, it must have a good philosophy department. We have a great philosophy department here. If we really want students to develop critical thinking skills, we should require philosophy as part of their curriculum. On page 31, at the end of the packet, you will see that there is a schedule for the philosophy club that was recently began, which one of the events actually has 7 faculty of UNK participating from 6 different departments. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Laurel Bain.
My name is Laurel Bain. I would like to give you a little bit of background about myself first before I start speaking about what I'd like to speak about. I am a Navy veteran. I was a legal clerk working for a Rear Admiral in San Diego. I am also a former construction technology instructor for a local community college, and I am currently a student of philosophy and psychology at UNK. I tell you this about myself because I have seen firsthand what our future holds. I have been in positions of authority, and I see that our students need critical thinking. Philosophy promotes critical thinking. Getting rid of the major would be detrimental to our society. This is our future workforce. These are our family members, and these are our community. The programs that would benefit from philosophy aren't just philosophy students. Political science majors need philosophy. Psychology students need philosophy. History students need philosophy. Law students need philosophy. It is my understanding that the program was given 3 years to increase their numbers before voting on whether the major would be discontinued or not. 2 of those years have been in a pandemic. Philosophy cannot be taught through Zoom. Philosophy needs to be face-to-face. So to ask the philosophy teachers to increase their numbers during a pandemic is not fair. To vote on the issue right now and ask and to I'm emotional. To vote on this issue without giving instructors enough time to really increase their numbers it's just not fair to the program. If at the very least you could increase the time allowed to improve the numbers in the program, that would be greatly appreciated. If your goal is to grow and have impact on the community, you're going to need critical thinkers for that. I'd like to end with, it is way easier to spend money on the program than it is to save it. So please continue this philosophy program. Keep the major. You're going to help not only the school, but the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Martin.
Dr. Thomas Martin, Professor of Philosophy. Why do you care so much about wealth, reputation, and honor, so little about your soul? Socrates. The soul is the principle in man, the light of reason, which the Western world has harvested, that gives you moral truth, gives you virtues and vices. Welcome, President Carter came to our university recently and spoke about the need for higher education, and a student asked him, what is your support of the humanities? He gave a wonderful answer. He's gone to the Naval Academy. We have 24 hours of humanities offered at the Naval Academy for the formation of their character so they can be captains only, and not only of their souls, but of ships too. And at UNK, they've methodically eliminated humanities to one course now in which you could take children's literature, and that would be your only humanities. At one time, I taught 9 hours of upper division course writing intensive and 9 hours of humanities, I had 70 students. Today I have 18 methodically cut. Across the bay from Annapolis, there's Talbot County, where Frederick Douglass read Socrates' the words I just spoke to you when he was a slave, and his mistress mistakenly taught him that he was reading, and the master found out and reminded her very quickly that he was chattel and he was not allowed to read. And at that time, he envied the slaves because he realized, my God, how good he had it, because now his intellect had shown him what he was. And when he said that right back then, he said, at that moment after reading Socrates, the silver trumpet of freedom had aroused my soul to eternal wakefulness. We're here for the souls of our students. If you want to develop the intellects of Nebraskans, you have got to show them that philosophy is something. When Socrates approached death, he said death is one or two things. It is a dead, dark hole, or a light that walks through into the darkness. Your soul moves on. You have to give a student an education with hope where they learn how to walk through the darkness of death to give them the moral truth to which they go. Martin Luther King, if you do not know what you're willing to die for, you do not have a life worth living. To give a death sentence to Socrates, this is not the first time it's happened. If you close the souls of these students and don't show them that within them, our first generation of students, Frederick Douglass was a first generation of student. My father, Mike Yanni, Pete Peterson, one of my father's friends, were first generation Nebraska, and they read literature, they read history, and they read philosophy. We have methodically eliminated these courses from our students to make it accessible for a new generation. We don't think they're able to read and write, and that is what we're giving them right now in Nebraska, and we've methodically eliminated philosophy, literature, and anything serious in their academic for a workforce. Man does not live to make a living. He wants a life that's worth living. And if you take that away from them, they'll have no gusto, and the workers you get will not know the virtues and vices that give you the power to be the captain of your own soul and the navigator of your own life, because that is what an education is for. It is for life, liberty, and inalienable rights to see that you have the pursuit of happiness and teach you how to walk through death. And if you don't have a philosophy where you can walk through death, you do not have a life worth living. Thank you for your patience and your kindness.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Luke Hamilton.
Good morning, and thank you for permitting me to speak to you today. Nebraska State Normal School at Kearney, Nebraska State Teachers College at Kearney, Kearney State College, and finally the University of Nebraska at Kearney. These are the names that have graced the institution that I have come to love over the past 7 years. First as a biology major, then as a graduate student in the biology department, and now as a staff member, a research technician in the biology department. Over the years, UNK has become far more than a college to me. The faculty and staff there are more like my second family. The future of UNK is therefore of great importance to me, and today I am concerned for that future. Specifically, I fear that one day soon a new name will have to be given to UNK, CNTC, Central Nebraska Technical College. Now, there is nothing wrong with technical colleges per se. There are many who receive technical degrees and serve their communities quite well. My point today is that there is a substantial difference between a technical college and a university. I have had the privilege to attend many commencement ceremonies at UNK, and several times I have heard Chancellor Christensen tell the graduates, "You have not been trained, you have been educated." Now, what does he mean by educated? I think that there are at least two things that he means. One, that the students have been taught to critically evaluate their own thought processes and beliefs so that they can improve their own thinking over time. And two, that the students have been taught perspectives from a broad range of disciplines so that when they encounter a problem, they can approach it with a broad range of tools. Now, if these are indeed the core principles of a university education, then it is insane to get rid of philosophy as a major, because the study of philosophy is the highest expression of these principles. After all, who better to teach critical thinking than philosophers who have studied the greatest works, the works of the greatest minds in history? And who better to give students a broad view of the arts and sciences than philosophers who have studied the principles of aesthetics and logic which underlie all the arts and sciences? Indeed, the study of philosophy lies at the very heart of what it means to be educated, and this fact is so obvious that I am dumbfounded that we are even here having this discussion today. I am a multiple generation Nebraskan who loves our state very much, but I must say that today, for the first time, I am embarrassed to be a Nebraskan, because I am embarrassed that this is even a topic of discussion at a Board of Regents meeting. I will leave you with a quote from Sir Francis Bacon, the English philosopher who is largely responsible for developing the scientific method as we practice it today. He said that half of science is putting forth the right questions. And I ask you this, if students do not have a firm foundation in philosophy and the other humanities to guide them to the right questions, then what is the point in teaching them science? What is the point of generating an entire workforce of people with technical skills if there are no leaders to direct that workforce? And in light of these questions, I ask that you take a stand today for the quality of education in our state by retaining philosophy as a major at UNK. Thank you.
Thank you. Elijah Frazier.
Good morning. My name is Elijah Frazier, and I am a senior at UNK, majoring in business administration and minoring in philosophy. And today I just want to urge you humbly to keep the major of philosophy at UNK going and alive and strong. Because here's the thing, as Dr. Martin kind of alluded to, we all want what is true, what is good and beautiful. We want to pursue those things. Those are the most fundamental desires of our heart. A good career that's successful, makes a lot of money, is fun and nice, but there's more to life, and we all know that, and you know that if you're true with yourself. Philosophy equips us with the critical thinking necessary to see these things that are good, true, and beautiful, the first step in moving and directing ourselves to these things and living them out in our lives. And I think it would be a shame to deprive students of a philosophy major because you're not allowing them access to this subject that forms them in a manner that enables them to pursue what is good, what is true, and what is beautiful. So I ask you today to please strongly consider maintaining the major at UNK in the philosophy department. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Gene Fent.
If I were teaching business ethics, which I don't for a reason which I will remind you of in a moment, what I would say what's going on here is a case study in moral hazard. As you know, a situation of moral hazard is created when an association or agreement is arranged in such a way that all or the most substantial part of the risk entailed falls only on one party. This opens the path for other parties to take advantage of those who bear the risk. The decision procedure by which the Regents, the Coordinating Commission, and the administration of the University of Nebraska operate, one based on credit hour production and graduation rates, creates just such a situation of moral hazard, and the risk, all of it, falls on the students. The faculty know that the decisions from continuing programs to portioning campus funding are made exactly on the basis of those graduation rates, etc. More poetically and more bluntly, meat in seats. Since this is the basis of administrative decision-making, the faculty are systemically encouraged to make all their efforts bend towards the administrative measurement. This sets up a race to the academic bottom. For what is necessary under these administrative conditions are the following things: the invention of majors and minors, which are relatively easy, designing such programs in such a way that the students are discouraged from leaving the comfortable enclosure of their chosen college or major where they might be poached by another college or department, which also needs meat. Thus, business, social work, and biology, for instance, all have invented and require an ethics course for their majors. None of these specialized ethics courses, however, require a general ethics course first, and all of them require the students to avoid precisely those faculty who spent a considerable part of their graduate education both studying and teaching ethics in favor of teachers who did no such thing. This sounds to some like a perfectly absurd educational arrangement. Kafka could not do better. But you see, I trust, that it makes perfect sense under the condition of administrative decision-making and measurement. UNK has succeeded admirably at meeting all the demands of the administrative weather by cutting the general studies program in the way that it has. At least some of the faculty realize that the way the system is operating is absurd. Recently, I received an email from one such faculty member. Curiously, she is in one of those departments that have invented their own ethics course. She wrote, and I quote, "I'm sorry I failed to answer a couple of your questions. Yes, I think the current GS program is truly awful. I also dislike dual credit and seeing students enter UNK with most of their GS program completed, yet not be able to write a coherent paragraph. Here was my answer. I thought we agreed on several matters of importance. I'm glad to find out it's true. Your department has the power to change its own requirements. So does every other department. But ordering things correctly might be costly. It makes things more difficult. There are easy ways to get through college. Students will leave the program. Administrators will cut funding. You may perhaps think, pick where you want your life to be spent and what kinds of child abuse you're willing to participate in.
Time.
Matthew Duffy.
The 4 years I spent at UNK studying philosophy were the most formative and life-defining period of formal education I have ever received. I owe my own profession as a Nebraska high school teacher almost entirely to the fire I caught as a student in this program. I'm here because an institution that has done me incalculable good is being threatened with destruction. Smother the philosophy department at UNK, and you smother an institution that has brought and continues to bring purpose, direction, and illumination to people's lives. The work being carried on in this department is rare and it's precious. I want to list 5 reasons why I think it's absolutely vital that the philosophy department at UNK be preserved and protected. Primary texts. UNK's philosophy department is among the handful of programs left in the United States where the curriculum consists entirely of primary texts. You're not told what to think about Aristotle, Locke, or Nietzsche. You're asked to read slowly and carefully the original compositions of these thinkers. Dialectical Classroom. Every philosophy class at UNK is characterized by rigorous, living dialectic. This pedagogical approach is as old as Socrates, and I've never seen this approach used with greater skill and facility than it's used by the professors at UNK. Exceptional argumentative rigor. More than any other class I took at UNK, UNK philosophy taught me to provide and to expect from others a sound, rational basis for claims and assertions. In other words, they taught me how to think, to begin to distinguish clear reasoning from muddled thought and sophistry. In our current age of rampant misinformation and distraction, there's no skill more vital. Excellence of instruction. After graduating UNK, I got a master's degree in English from the University of Dallas, a well-respected liberal arts college in Texas. No professor I have had before or since has exceeded my professors at UNK in quality of instruction. Some of the best professors in the nation, I'm convinced, reside in the little town of Kearney, Nebraska, teach in the humble department at UNK. 5, existential relevance. The approach to philosophy taken by all the professors at UNK presupposes an intimate relationship between the life of the mind and the life well lived. Young people today are desperate for a sense of purpose and meaning. The education that the UNK philosophy department provides has never been more important than it is right now.
Seconds.
I challenge any department in the entire university system to show forth a body of alumni whose minds, hearts, and lives have been more dramatically changed for the better than that of this department. UNK philosophy is a guiding light in the midst of a time of great confusion and distraction. With confidence in the goodwill and good sense of this Board of Regents, I plead with you, do not douse this light.
I have one other person who has asked to speak on another agenda item, but it's not related to what we've just covered, and I think this might be a good time for us to just stop for a minute, pose a question to Chancellor Gold and Chancellor Christensen, just to get some clarification here from your perspective. So,
does that comport with our rules, though? I didn't think we were allowed to make comment or ask questions in public discussion like that.
Okay, we'll wait and do that at the agenda item then. Thank you. We had then a request by Chris Wagner.
Morning. I'm Chris Wagner with Project Extra Mile, and I am here on behalf of 500 plus Nebraskans that are part of our coalition to ask you to not move forward with the 2 agenda items specific to alcohol. I just want to first actually give you kudos and the university kudos, because over the past 20 years, we have seen the cooperation that you've made and fostered with the city, with the bridge, seen a drop in binge drinking among your college students from 62% back in the late 90s to 35% in 2018. And that is just a huge success. And so I do want to thank you for that, but I also want to reference what President Carter said in his opening, the emphasis on growth and impact of the decisions that you make. And I would argue that while you may see growth in revenues from this decision, you will also see growth in binge drinking. You will also see growth in underage drinking. You will also see growth in alcohol-related crashes in the community. And so I would urge you to keep these policies in place because they really do work. And they are recommended by the U.S. Surgeon General and by a National Task Force on Alcohol Abuse. And then to just convey to you that we know that having alcohol at these events is going to lead to increased underage drinking. While you may have the best ideas in place to prevent these sales from occurring, I can tell you, we just worked with law enforcement in the Omaha metro area 2 months ago. 16% of businesses sold alcohol to minors using their ID that said they were under the legal age. In addition, individuals of legal age are able to purchase alcohol at the concessions areas and bring them to the seating areas where it is almost impossible to monitor whether or not they pass it off to minors in attendance. I would also say that the same applies to intoxicated individuals. We are the 4th worst binge drinking state in the country. The city of Lincoln is the 3rd worst binge drinking city in the country. And we're the 2nd worst DUI state in the country with over nearly 1.9 million episodes of drunk driving every year, almost the same as our population. So it's a serious problem, and having these policies in place helps. Thirdly, I would just argue that we do not need, as the university, we have the public support. We are nearing 400 consecutive sellouts without alcohol. We don't need this, and I would urge you to consider the other side of the coin when you're making these decisions. And I hope that you'll take a look at the materials I provided, that you'll postpone a decision today on this issue, and really think hardly about the implications for public health and safety, not only among your student population, but among the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other person present that would like to speak on an item that is on the agenda for consideration later today that we've not heard from? Okie dokie. Then we declare the opportunity for public comment to be closed. We need to move forward now, first of all, with the consent agenda. As the name implies, the consent agenda is moved and voted on as a group, as opposed to the administrative agenda where we're going to take items individually, and we'll get back to this UNK philosophy thing when we get around to that one. So, unless one of my colleagues on the board wishes to pull an item from the consent agenda and put it on the administrative side, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to pull the military tuition so we could talk about it and say some words in support of that.
Okie dokie. What's the number on that one, Rob, please?
11A2.
A2.
Okay. 2.
I just want to talk about it. I just want to talk about it. But I think, don't we have to pull it to talk about it?
We have to consider it on the administrative agenda then separately.
Yeah, we got to do it that way. Pointing that out to me a minute ago. Correct. All righty. Then we have, do we have a motion for the consent agenda? We need to vote.
I'll make it.
We need to vote on.
Need to vote on the consent agenda. We have a motion from Regent Kinney. We need a second. It's pulled. Yep.
Okay. Pulled then the item that Regent Schaefer requested. We'll discuss that. We have a motion to move the other items. Is there a second? Second? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer? Yes. Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Claire? Regent Kenny?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All righty. All right, then Rob asked to comment a minute on item 11A2, so let's just stop and take a look at that one. Is there a motion to approve that item, and then we can move forward and discuss it? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Call the roll, please. Discussion.
I'm just, wanted this poll just to, I think this is a great change, especially as we continue to try to draw, recruit, retain, and hopefully have talent retire here in Nebraska. Everything we can do regarding our military, this coincides with what's been going on with the legislature, where I believe it was 2 years ago, they made 50% of military retirement excluded from income tax here in Nebraska, and I believe last year, this past year, it's now 100%. I think this coincides with that. Hopefully to continue to make Nebraska, as a state as well as the University of Nebraska, one of the most military-friendly places for folks affiliated with military to come, work, play, and hopefully retire and be a part of our communities here, and to also receive an education. So I'm really happy to see this come forward. I believe this came up through academic affairs, and I'm no longer on that committee, but good work. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the comments, Rob. Appreciate that. Any other comments on this item? Call the roll on the approval then of item 11A2.
Regent Hemmer? Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites? Regent Claire? Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All righty, I think it's about time for me just to dump this over onto your lap, President Carter, and
We'll now consider the administrative agenda. We'll start off with academic affairs. The first item is item 12A1, which is approval of award of honorary degrees and awards. We'll discuss that in closed session and come back and vote on that after closed session. As such, item 12A2 seeks your approval to eliminate the Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy at UNK. Now, let me just say up front, program elimination for any of our programs, university system-wide, absolutely gives us no pleasure, and it has to be done carefully, thoughtfully, and that has been brought forward. Our programs must meet or exceed the Coordinating Commission for Post-Secondary Education Minimum Performance Standards, which is outlined in Commission Rule Number 4. Bachelor's degree programs are required to produce a mean of 7 degrees over the prior 5-year period. The monitoring report approved by the board on June 25th, 2021 noted a 5-year mean of 1.6 degrees, well below the CCPE threshold. Regrettably, the philosophy program failed to achieve the objectives set forth on the August 3rd, 2018 action plan, which would have brought the program into CCPE compliance. As such, elimination is certainly warranted in terms of a proposal, and that's what's on the table. In short, we can either take responsibility for these programs or have program elimination possibly forced upon us by the CCPE. Now, this item was reviewed by the Academic Affairs Committee, and I do recommend it for your approval.
I think it's appropriate that we also clarify the fact that we are not stopping teaching that particular area. Is that correct, Chancellor?
To continue and complete their degree with that major.
Philosophy classes, although it will not be a separate major, will continue to be offered.
That's correct.
Okay. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
We have a little bit more time for discussion. If
Does it after a motion and a second? That would be for discussion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion then on this item?
I have a question for the professor.
Sure.
I appreciate your comments, and that was probably one of the most memorable things that I've seen as far as just people from the general public coming up. So my question to you is this: does your department teach our students how to critically think for themselves, or are they teaching them how and what to think?
We teach Nietzsche, we teach Heidegger, we teach what looks like nihilism, and you argue from the devil's perspective, and we teach Augustine Aquinas. They've read the Summa Theologica, they've read Hitler Mein Kampf, and they can argue for themselves. More importantly, to remember, we've been removed completely from the general studies. We're one of 38 different classes they can choose from. Before, when we were one of 4 choices, and I had 20 kids taking philosophy of religion. We were in Chesterton, and we were reading Nietzsche together. We read all of Everlasting Man and Beyond Good and Evil. And these Nebraskan kids, you would not believe the intellects that walk out of these places. But unless you give them those books to read, you'll never awaken their intellects, and you're throwing them under the bus. And it's on your watch. This is not about just getting majors. We're not even required in the general studies. They don't even take us. And the kids that take us, you'll see them, they'll come alive to their intellects. My dad started at Kearney Catholic. He took Latin. He came out of Battle Creek, Nebraska, a dirt farm. My grandmother taught at Meadow Grove in 1906. I'm the 4th generation of Nebraskans. And to do with these kids, you don't realize the intellect you can unleash. And when you give them namby-pamby courses, you're going to get namby-pamby workers. They won't have perseverance, discipline. They'll have no control of their own souls. And they take in Zoom classes, they can barely read and write. I sit in rooms with loads of kids who can't read and write, and I've been doing this for 78 semesters. Every semester I teach 2 intros. I am 4 times older than they are now, and when I started when I was a kid, some of the girls used to fall in love with me, but those days are long gone. But I'm who's teaching your kids, and I will not do it on Zoom. I'm going to sit there writing their talk, and we're going to argue like they did at the Naval Academy, because they gave them 24 hours. They had to read the literature adventures of sailing. You got to read Moby Dick if you were a sailor. My God, you got a pair. Nebraska's got a damn Navy. If we played football and we said Navy 24, UNK takes 3 hours of humanities. If we saw that in football, we'd fire the coach. Academically irresponsible is what's going on here. They don't take the course because they're not required, they're not even offered. You let them take business ethics. We replaced all of the ethics. I was teaching, and this is very important, I was teaching Aristotle to these kids and reading Solzhenitsyn's 540-page cancer ward with kids in Nebraska who never read a book in their life till they've been in my class. I gave my life to this, and you're going to teach them the thing, if you don't have a life worth living, Socrates says, philosophy is the art of dying. Because when you take your talents out of Nebraska, when you take your intellects in state, you're going to die to yourself. Because the whole art of taking your intellect is to serve the good of the others. You never serve yourself. You cannot be self-serving. And if you put me in front of a class with 100 students and you put up anything they got, and I'll play football with you. I'm an old basketball player. I'll play one-on-one with you, and I'll give them books. No textbook education, no Scantron exams. You're going to read and write for your life's sakes because God gave you a mind to use. And you have unalienable rights. And unless you realize those rights, you're not going to be happy. It's a pursuit of happiness because your whole life, if you do not pursue virtue, you will not be happy and your towns will all die. That's what I teach in class. And I've woken up these kids. My dad went here in the middle of the Depression, got out, found his first job on a railroad. It's an amazing thing. 500 students. They had a Latin club with 50 kids in it in Nebraska. It's amazing. Go back and look in the yearbooks. What we offered, we're offering these kids drivel nowadays. They don't read and write for their lives. And I'm serious. Come and sit in my classroom and watch what I do, and then go watch what it looks like on a Zoom lecture class with a bunch of kids falling asleep. And you wonder where your workforce went? Look in a Zoom classroom sometime. You couldn't have killed these kids easier than gave them Zoom and put them on those classes with Scantron exams. The next generation, you're bringing up Hispanic kids. Yo puedo hablar español because my father graduated from here, went to work with the American Embassy and could learn Spanish like that. I remember Pete Peterson was in our house once in Lima, Peru when I was a little boy. Nebraska boys. That's what you got to give kids in an educational system. You got to give them fire because you want them to direct their own lives and be in charge of themselves because they're Nebraska and Nebraska deserves better than what we're giving them now. We're building a very beautiful STEM case. You got a STEM case. You got a brain stem with no soul to it. It's the content of your character that wins the day, and that's not something you can build because the university is in the mind of a student, and that mind is a terrible thing to waste. Martin Luther King. And we're not developing the souls. We're creating a workforce that's not workable, and you're seeing it in your own businesses. You tell me how many sound employees you find and how easy they are to find and why there's a brain drain. You have to give them a life worth living. But that's Socrates. That's not Tom Martin. I was a D student, failed out of school, but I played basketball. Damn, I could play basketball. Got a Bill Walton jump shot. You'd have loved to see it. I can barely walk. I got my braces on now. I teach till I die, but they're getting me in my philosophy department, which means the reason we don't have the major, they didn't put us in there. If you put us in there and compete with the rest of them, the years we did that, I had 11 graduates 10 years ago. I had 70 kids in class. Today, I got 18 in one class with nobody because they eliminated us. The kids are taking kitty lit instead of intro to philosophy. You could have read Aristotle when you're 18. You could have read Cancer Ward, won the Nobel Prize in literature. You never read a book in your life, and now you're reading Solzhenitsyn. My God, you want that when you're a kid? You're darn right you did.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate your comment and your enthusiasm.
It's not mine. Philosophy gave it to me.
I have a question too.
Other comments?
I have a question. I'd like to know why the lack of students. Is it because of the requirement, or it sounds like there was a lot of students and now there's hardly any?
We have 3 hours of humanity.
Doctor, this is not a debate. We're not asking you the question.
Okay,
You can sit down
sorry,
now.
Sir. Sorry.
Maybe Doug, you want to answer that?
Well, I think the first thing you need to understand is that the general studies, and Professor Martin is passionate. I have great respect for him. Good and decent man. General studies is the province of the faculty. They determine what goes into the general studies program. Yes, there has been a reduction in the number of hours that totally a UNK student would need to take for general studies. That puts it in line with the other campuses. It also assists in getting the 4-year graduation rates. It helps in terms of transfer students, so they don't have all that time going back. Ideally, we'd have 150 hours required for graduation, so we could take all these other classes. But you as a board know that you've had to make some tough decisions about how do you balance the number of hours versus the cost versus the debt and putting those students out. I think that it's wrong to believe that philosophy is not effective. It is. It's a discipline that's good. But you also have to look at, I think, the philosophic, if you will, approach here. You as a board have a decision to make. Either you have control over programs or you turn it over to the coordinating commission. In my experience, that is not a good thing to do. The board needs to be in charge of what our programs are and not abdicate that to the other constitutional office. So it is Regent Kenney, the providence of the faculty in terms of what gets included in general studies. And yes, we've made some difficult choices to reduce the total number. The faculty make the decisions about what goes into that factor of their choices.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. Other questions from my colleagues?
I was going to comment. I appreciate your passion. I was a philosophy major. As I mentioned to some of my colleagues before, it had a profound impact on my life. And I'd like to think on my patients. And I did study Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, in the original Greek, and the original Latin, and in the primary texts. I took all the classes. But we also have a system. We have to follow that system. And if the students aren't there, they're not there. And as much as we care, we have to make these decisions across the board. And we have spent a lot of time in faculty, and we have to follow, in my opinion, the system that we have in place. Thank you for your service, though.
I think as someone who's an employer, it's important that we have people, when they come into jobs, that can critically think and problem solve. You know, as far as whether they can go through all the calculus and some of those things that maybe don't apply, you know, in as much in the real world. The critical thinking skills and problem solving skills, I think, are very important, and I think that's what's missing in some of our employees across the country. And I think it's important that our students be able to be exposed to that, and because of that, I want my kids to be able to critically think for themselves and come to their own conclusions and solve their problems. And because of that, I'm going to vote against this proposal to eliminate the department at UNK.
Blair?
Well, being on academic affairs and listening to the presentations today, I would like to offer a friendly amendment to what was just recently moved, and I would like to have us go back and send this back to not only academic affairs but have a discussion about it, study it a little bit further. My concern is that if I look at my packet says beginning in 1995. There's been issues with the CCPE. There's been issues with getting. It looks like a lot of enthusiasm, with all due respect to the 70 students you said you had. There's been issues with trying to get student involvement. All that being said, my friendly amendment to the motion would be let's take one more look at this and study it one more time, and then bring it back to the board.
So
at a later date.
If I understand your amendment, you'd ask us to delay the action on the item until the next regular board meeting and refer it back to academic affairs, or comment back to the board. Someone who would second that friendly amendment?
Second.
Okay. So what we're talking about now is whether we're going to act on the item today or we're going to delay the action, just so we're clear on what you're voting on. So now there's an opportunity to discuss the amendment, which was to delay the action. So if you have a comment relating to delay the action, we can talk about that. If you have another comment, we're not going to talk about it. Okay? Yes, sir.
So you're wanting to make the amendment. I guess I had a question in regard to Academic Affairs Committee and their recommendation. I'm assuming that Academic Affairs was unanimous in advancing this. So could I get filled in by Academic Affairs on?
Your assumption is correct.
So Academic Affairs worked
Yes.
and vetted through this. Every committee has their work to work hard. Academic Affairs has vetted and unanimously approved the recommendation here.
To bring it
Yes.
forward.
To bring it forward.
And
To bring it forward unanimously, which, am I assuming that everybody was, without recommendation from Academic Affairs, was to support eliminating it at UNK?
That's correct.
And we're eliminating the bachelor's degree. We're not eliminating the Department of Philosophy.
Or a
Correct.
minor, or the classes,
Right.
or faculty.
It's simply the major. We're saying you can't get a bachelor degree in philosophy.
Thank you.
Classes would be our understanding and recommendation from Academic Affairs that the classes would continue to be there and available.
Right now, we have a motion and a second on the floor to amend this item to send it back to Academic Affairs Committee. We need to dispense of that.
That's right. Okay?
So this would just be to amend it to send it back to Academic Affairs, not what would occur with item 12A2. This is purely on Regent Claire's amendment to change the action to send this back for further review to Academic Affairs.
So let's call the roll on that amendment. If you're voting yes, you're voting to send it back to Academic Affairs and not take any further action today. If you're voting no, then we'll come back to the original motion, which is to take action today. Call the roll, please.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer?
No.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
No.
Regent Claire? Yes. Regent Kenny? Yes. Regent Ferris?
No.
Regent Pillen?
No.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
No.
The motion fails.
Okay, so now we're back to the original motion, is to accept the recommendation, and we are again, as Regent Whites has pointed out, we are eliminating the major. We are not eliminating
The course.
department or the classes. Call the roll on that motion.
Can I pose a question? So going into this, my understanding was that, going back to what Chancellor Christensen was saying, that if we didn't act on this, the CCPE would come in and act on it for us. Also in the wording, I heard possible. They could possibly come in and eliminate this if we choose not to. I guess I kind of want to have a conversation as to what goes into that possibility. Is it going to happen or is it not going to happen? Because I think that's a key thing to consider with this.
So I'll ask Dr. Gold as our Executive Vice President and Provost to talk about that process.
Thank you. So this would be reviewed by the Education Committee of the Coordinating Commission. Given the number of majors, again, underscore what was just said, we're not talking about the department, the courses, or the minor. We're just talking about the major. But this does not meet the thresholds for the Coordinating Commission, and it is likely that they will act. Of course, they're an elected body as well, and they're subject to deliberation and input. But the experience has been that they will act.
Going back to that then, just with what Chancellor Christensen said, I think this comes back to board responsibility and accountability. We have the pleasure of making a lot of easy decisions around here, I think, and this unfortunately is not one. Not the first to say it. I'm not going to be the last to say it. This isn't easy. This is very, very difficult. But this is accountability. This is in our realm of responsibility, and we're not going to make somebody come in and do that for us. So I think this is something that we just have to hold ourselves accountable to.
Other comment? All right, remind you what you're voting on. The original motion was to accept the recommendation and to remove the major.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
No.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Clare? Yes. Regent Kenny?
No.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All righty then.
We're moving on to Business and Finance. This is item 12B1, seeks your approval to amend Regents Policy 6.4.1 regarding the dispensing of alcohol beverages on university property. So I know there's been quite a bit of interest in this particular topic, so I'd like to say a few words about what this proposed change would and would not do. We are bringing this change to you only after a great deal of thoughtful discussion, certainly predating my time here among the board, the administration, and our chancellors. I think this makes a lot of sense and is a practical first step if we ever decide to go down the path of allowing alcohol at additional university athletic events. This proposed change is about consistency across our campuses. We have followed a piecemeal approach for many years that has become inefficient. Frankly, our 20-plus year policy prohibiting alcohol at university athletic events is essentially irrelevant. As fans at Baxter Arena can tell you, it makes much more sense for us to all be following the same policy. This policy, if you approve, would allow the president and the respective chancellor to allow alcohol at athletic events if we feel it is the right direction for the University of Nebraska. It would also allow us to authorize alcohol advertising and sponsorships on university property. Opening our events to alcohol would be a decision we would make only after considering all parts of the equation. Is there a business case there? Are there right safety protocols and infrastructure in place? Is it in the best interest of our fans? Is it in the best interest of the University of Nebraska? Now, I want to tell you, we're not going to rush any decisions. Many of the questions that have come to me, and I'm sure to Chancellor Green and others, as well as whether we might see alcohol at Memorial Stadium. We don't have an answer for you at this time. What I can tell you, it will not be this fall. And what I will tell you, as long as I am the president of the university system, if you vote to give this authority to me and to the chancellors, we will never bring alcohol to an athletic event without first bringing it before this body. That includes Pinnacle Bank Arena, Haymarket, and Memorial Stadium. So even though you may approve to give me that authority, I am committing to you that I will not abuse that authority without bringing it back before you. So I think that's important. What this proposed change would do is create consistency and flexibility for us to move forward when and if we decide to do so. This item was reviewed by the Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve item 12B1. Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion? I've been asked, President Carter, by a number of people if this discussion about the wrestling,
Which is
Big
a
Ten
separate
wrestling.
item we'll consider.
Separate item, but
Right.
is that a thing that was requested by the Big Ten? Is that where that came from?
Correct.
And that's not a part of what we're voting on here. We're gonna come back to that.
That's a separate item
That's a
that we'll
separate
vote
item.
on.
Okay.
I would just, I'm in support of this. I believe the university, I think, really has a tendency to sometimes over-regulate, and I'm a strong believer in treating adults as adults and let them make their own decisions and govern and their behaviors accordingly. But I think it's time we do this and move.
Mr. Chairman?
Jim?
Yeah, I guess a question, would you be able to bring me up to speed on where we're at in terms of alcohol policy in the auspices of One Nebraska? All campuses the same, because it's a little inconsistent, I think. So
I agree.
Where are we at today? UNO, UNK, NCTA?
So today, we do serve alcohol at Baxter Arena for hockey and basketball games at UNO.
Both men's and women's basketball
Correct.
games and hockey?
That's correct.
How about the new baseball and softball stadiums?
Correct. They are served there as well. This would at least bring us into a consistent policy across the campuses where any change to what we currently do, as I just said, especially at UNL, where we have not had alcohol previously, we would bring back before the board.
There is alcohol sold in some spots on Innovation Campus, correct?
Let's make it also clear there's alcohol being consumed all over campus, especially on game day. And to not recognize that is
But we're talking about
naive.
sporting events, not just on campus.
Yep, so in follow-up to your comment, Regent Claire, yes, we do have a commercial site on Innovation Campus, the Mill, that does serve alcohol under license requirements.
Councilor Christensen?
I think it's important, though, that clarify that alcohol is prohibited on state property, except whoever's the administrator of the building or the facility can give a one-time or can give permission. And so you may see that there would be a holiday reception in one of the buildings where you would have donors in. There's a form, there's a process where you review, are there minors, is there food going to be served, cost, those sorts of things. Those are done in Regent Claire. That happens not every day, but across the university perhaps. That's a common event, but it is limited to a request per facility. This is talking about athletic events in general.
I agree. My point in making that is that I think I'm going to vote in favor of this from the standpoint that I'd like to keep control of how this is sold, what our policies are, how our negotiations with our partners go, because there's a lot of things that we've got to work out there. There's a lot of issues. I'd love to see some of the proceeds be used to help curb binge drinking. So I think there's a lot of things, a lot of questions that are not answered, but to the extent this gives us the opportunity to control it, that's what I'm in favor of.
Batul's not here, but Batul wanted me to make a comment about how with this policy, student safety would be a priority. instead of like drinking before you go to the game and then driving over. This policy could potentially allow for students to drink at events where they are, monitored by people that would be selling the alcohol, and that, student safety is, certainly important, and that when we have policies that allow for sales possibly at games, that student safety would be a priority with that.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think one comment that I think is really important is the need to develop consistency, number one. And number two, President Carter, I appreciate your comments because ultimately, if you said this is my call and my call only if we're voting on that, I'm voting against because if there's a decision for alcohol in Baxter Arena or wherever it's going to be, that should be the pleasure of the elected body. And if the people don't agree with that, they can make changes. So I think that's a really, really important issue. So I'm supportive of moving forward and that we learn more and have further discussions. But if there's going to be a move, I believe this body should have a public vote.
I concur with Regent Pillen's comment.
And as I said, that would be my commitment to all of you while I'm in this position.
That comment puts me in a different position than I would be without it. Any other comments? We have a motion and a second and a secretary who's just itching to call the roll.
Got a rash.
That's his beard itch. That's his beard itch.
Fire away.
Regent Hemmer.
Yes.
Regent Cradaville.
Yes.
Regent Limbach.
Yes.
Regent Clare.
Yes.
Regent Kenny.
Yes.
Regent Ferris.
Yes.
Regent Pillen.
Yes.
Regent Schaefer.
Yes.
Regent Stark.
Yes.
And Regent Whites.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, and if I may interject into something here, since we've been here for the last 2.5 hours, some of us anchored to the seats that we are currently occupying, I'd like to propose that we take a short 7-minute break and allow you the opportunity to use the facilities, and then we will move forward.
That's great.
We'll reconvene in 7 minutes. All righty, thank you for your indulgence. There have been several suggestions that since we have now run out of coffee, we should just adjourn and go home.
Adjourn the meeting, please.
But you're out of line,
I'd say,
Regent
sorry.
Kenny, so we're gonna go ahead and finish this agenda. All righty?
Okay.
Okay, we are on item 12B2. It seeks your approval to acquire real property located at 2411 Cotton Mill Avenue in Kearney, Nebraska. David Wiebe and family wish to donate this 12.5 acre property adjacent to Cotton Mill Park to UNK. The university appreciates the generous gift proposed by the Wiebe family and its potential for UNK. This item was reviewed by Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make it.
Is there a second? I see several heads nodding, so just pick one that you like, Bill. Any discussion? Questions, comment?
It's a beautiful location.
It's good.
All right, let's call the roll.
Regent Cradaville.
Yes.
Regent Limbach.
Yes.
Regent Hemmer.
Yes.
Regent Kenny.
Yes.
Regent Ferris.
Yes.
Regent Pillen.
Yes.
Regent Schaefer. Yes. Regent Stark.
Yes.
Regent Whites.
Yes.
Regent Clare.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Item 12B3 seeks your approval to execute an addendum to the lease and operating agreement at Pinnacle Bank Arena to permit alcohol sales for the Big Ten Wrestling Championships on March 5th and 6th. This item was reviewed by the Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
All right,
So moved.
is there a second? Thought I heard a.
Second.
I did hear one, all right. We have a motion and a second. The item is on the table. Is there discussion, questions, comments? Yes, sir, Jim?
You know, I would just have a question. Let's just say that Pinnacle Bank was chosen to host a round of Sweet 16. NCAA would come in and do what in regard to alcohol?
It would be part of the event, just as
Alcohol
this.
would be part,
Yes.
because I think I remember it taking place. So
It has been served at all of the final rounds.
That would be what would take place at Pinnacle if we hosted Sweet 16 or first round NCAA basketball.
That's correct, Regent Pillen, because it's under the auspices of the contract with NCAA.
Yep, thank you.
How about baseball playoff?
Same thing as it's done at the College World Series.
And then you'd see an item regarding that, because it would be a contract item. Okay, any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Claire?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 12B4 seeks your approval to acquire real property located at 1030 Q Street in Lincoln, Nebraska. Acquisition of this property is related to the Westbrook Music Building Replacement Project approved at the December board meeting. To proceed as planned, the property will be razed upon acquisition. This item was reviewed by the Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Is there a motion?
Make it.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. Questions, comments, discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer? Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Claire?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Item 12B5 seeks your approval to sell the Colonial Terrace property currently managed by University Housing. This property, located 1 block south of 33rd and Holdridge Streets, was built in 1955. Economically, it is unfeasible for the university to renovate. As such, property sale is recommended. This item supports the 5-year strategy aim to evaluate university assets for monetization and was viewed by the Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Is there a motion?
Make it.
Your second.
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion? How do we propose to sell this property?
We would sell it through real estate on bid, public auction bid.
I'm sorry,
And we would sell it with public bid,
public bid?
and it would be at a minimum of appraised value.
Any other
I think
questions?
this item allows for sale by other methods as well, broker, and determine that that's in the best interest of the university.
Okay.
Just a comment that I think, number one, it's amazing what that asset has done over 50 years, so that's good news. But, you know, we've originally, when we would buy property, the original policy, I remember questioning to saying within 90% of appraised value, and anyway, it was confusing to maybe thinking we would be overpaying for assets. So I guess we have no policy that limits us. We can go after the market for this asset and get as much as the market drives, right? So that, just wanted to make sure of that.
Okay, let's call the roll.
Regent Hemmer? Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Claire?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Item 12B6 seeks your approval to complete the Saddle Creek Campus Public Improvements Project at UNMC. This item is a follow-up to the interlocal agreement the board approved in December with the City of Omaha for improvements to roadways, utilities, and other supporting infrastructure. This $18 million project is funded by the City of Omaha and the university's internal lending program can be utilized for short-term bridge financing if necessary. This item was reviewed by the Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second? Any question, comments, discussion?
I do have a question.
Yes.
In terms of the $18 million project funded by the city of Omaha, there was included in some description, some kind of a tower that would be a part of this change of roadway, and is that part of this particular motion?
No, it's not. This is just the utilities, road improvement and things of that nature. The parking structure and the investment in Project Next are all separate parts of the interlocal agreement.
Okay, thanks.
Mr.
Any other
Chairman, question.
questions?
So
Yes.
Chancellor Gold, so this 18 million would be a part of the overall 93 million that the city of Omaha is committed to the interlocal agreement, or is this separate on top of the 93 million is what I was
My
trying?
understanding that it's part of the 93 million.
Okay, thank you. Which, by the way, you know, is what the city of Omaha in this project's pretty, that's a great partnership, to say the least.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 12B7 seeks your approval to demolish the J.P. Lord Monroe Meyer Institute and Hattie B. Monroe home facilities at UNMC. As you may recall, the Monroe Meyer Institute moved to the former First Data building on UNO Scott campus last year. Demolition of these buildings will permit future development on the UNMC campus. The nearly $7 million required for demolition is entirely privately funded. This item was reviewed by the Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Or second?
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion? I know there was a little concern expressed a time or two by people saying, oh my goodness, you're getting rid of the Monroe Meyer Institute. No, 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 no. We're getting rid of where it used to be. It hasn't been there for a while. But the old building, not the program. So clarify that for sure.
Maybe clarify the investment that was made in Monroe Meyer. I think it was 85 clicks.
Yeah, the new building.
93.
93, I'm off.
Quite familiar with this piece of property. It's quite old, though.
Okay, let's call the roll.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer? Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Clare?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Item 12B8 seeks your approval of a guaranteed maximum price contract amendment for the Durham Science Center renovation at UNO. The approved program statement for this project includes use of the construction manager at risk delivery method. Per board policy, the Business and Finance Committee reviewed the intermediate design report on January 7th, 2022, and it was within the scope, schedule, and budget previously approved with a shift in budget category for a total construction budget of $28.9 million. McCarthy Building Companies Incorporated was selected as the CMR through a competitive qualification-based selection in accordance with board policy. Board approval is required to approve and execute construction contracts over $5 million, and as such, this contract amendment is being proposed today. This item was reviewed by Business and Finance Committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
Our motion? So moved. For a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there other questions, comments, discussion? Let's call the roll.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer? Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Clare?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
The motion passes.
So this is under the executive category, and this is item 12C1, seeks your approval of amendments to Section 5 of the Standing Rules of the Board of Regents relating to the public comment period. In short, this item would remove the current 30-minute limit on the total public comment period, something we did today, clarify that speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board, something that we did today, and add an option for submitting written testimony. In accordance with the board's rules, this item was included on the December 3rd, 2021 agenda for information only, and a hearing on the proposed amendments was conducted earlier in today's meeting. The item was reviewed by the executive committee, and I recommend it to you for your approval.
When you say testimony, is that just a written statement as opposed to?
What that means is somebody could submit a written testimony without coming and speaking to it.
But it's not a sworn statement, correct?
No.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, not a sworn statement.
All right, thank you.
Document with their name, address, the same things that they provide here, but in written form.
Any questions, comments?
That's a good idea.
Need a motion and a second in order to call the roll.
I'll make it.
Not a second.
Second.
Got a second and a third,
Yes, right.
and you can go ahead and call the roll.
Regent Hemmer?
Yes.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Clare?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris? Yes. Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer? Yes. Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites? The motion passes.
There are also numerous reports for your review.
On behalf of the board, I would accept the reports listed in the agenda, and I understand we have a motion for a closed session.
I move that the Board of Regents go into closed session as authorized by Section 84, 1410 of the revised statutes of Nebraska for the protection of the public interest, and to prevent needless injury to the reputation of persons who have not requested a public hearing for the purposes of holding a discussion limited to the following subjects: honorary degrees and awards, and personnel matters involving members of the university staff.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions? Comments? Call the roll.
Regent Cradaville?
Yes.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen?
Yes.
Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Clare? Yes. The motion passes.
Okay, I would declare that we need to go into closed session now. We're personnel matters. As you leave the room, please take with you all recording devices and personal belongings. Official session. I'm looking for a motion and a second on agenda item 12A1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any questions or discussion, comments?
Good plan.
Call the roll.
Regent Cradaville?
I'll abstain.
Regent Limbach?
Yes.
Regent Hemmer?
Yes.
Regent Ferris?
Yes.
Regent Pillen? Yes. Regent Schaefer?
Yes.
Regent Stark?
Yes.
Regent Whites?
Yes.
Regent Clare?
Yes.
Regent Kenny?
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. I would declare then that this meeting of the Board of Regents is adjourned. And as the Vice Chair of the Facilities Corporation, Liz O'Connor, who is not here, is the current Chair of the Facilities Corporation. I would call to order the meeting of the University Facilities Corporation. I would like to have a motion and a second that we approve the minutes of that last meeting, which consisted of electing the people.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other question or discussion? Call the roll. By acclamation, if you'd like. You just all want to go yay, we'll vote yay.
You got
Okay.
my thumb.
By acclamation, we're done, and we are, and the officers now for this year would be Liz O'Connor as the president, Rob Schaefer as the vice president of the Facilities Corporation. I have a motion,
So moved.
and You want to do that by acclamation?
Yep, yep.
All in favor then say yep. Yep. All opposed, no? Done did it. And we're now adjourned. And now we can go home.